Years went by and some lost hope that it would happen, but after many years, Devil May Cry 5 came out and it got fantastic reviews and great fan reception. How does it fare for me? Well, let's get right into it. Last we left off, we were talking about DMC4, and while the game was good, it did not hit the potential that most thought it could. The game was sadly rushed and had basically everything going against it. A few years after, we then got the DMC reboot, and for lack of a better phrase, it did not work out. Sales did not meet expectations, and everyone felt kind of burned out. The director of DMC 3 and 4, Itsuno, feeling a lot of that burn. He was the supervisor on the reboot, so he saw how everything went down. The fans were also not feeling great about it. There was a lot of arguing back and forth about the reboot's direction. It was not a good time. While gameplay-wise, the reboot actually does some really awesome stuff, the story and discourse did not give it any favors. The other issue is that, sadly at the time, this was not the only problem Capcom had. We had just seen Mega Man pretty much wiped minus a few tiny things, a lot of big franchises like Resident Evil not having the best entry, and just in general, the push towards Western studios making the games was not working out. They did have some success with Dragon's Dogma, which Itsuno directed, but it was after Dragon's Dogma came out where a big decision was going to be made. Itsuno felt that action games still have a place, so in secret around the time that DMC4 Special Edition was coming out, DMC5 had begun development. This does bring up the challenge that making a new game after a reboot is not easy, especially given the reception. Plus, this was long anticipated. Fans have been waiting since 2008, which even when the Special Edition 4 came out, that was 2015. It feels almost forever at that point. Another challenge was that it needed to have a great first impression. Considering what happened before, it was essential. The good news is that they had a lot of talent on board and they got to make use of the RE engine. We will see it a lot as we go along, but it was the best choice considering how beautiful the game looks. Now we have to talk about the big one, the reveal. Considering that the last DMC related games were the 4 Special Edition and the definitive edition of the reboot in 2015, yeah, this was a long time coming and a big moment for everyone involved. I can even give my perspective on this. It was E3 2018 during the Xbox conference and it was a fun time, getting to see some games and stuff which was cool. Then what seemed like a random trailer started playing and had tree roots flying all over the place, a large Titan demon and hearing some dialogue. Then the Capcom logo drops and a lot of people knew right away what this was. The reactions online were amazing. Again, DMC4 was 2008, so this was 10 years in the making. And this trailer in general was awesome since it showed a good amount of stuff, like the new engine, the gameplay, and the music. Ending with spring 2019 release date, which turned out being March 8th, 2019. It's great because 2 months before this was a Resident Evil 2 remake, which was also shown off at E3 2018. 2 massive Capcom games being shown off and coming out that soon was great. I knew this was a big deal. Honestly, looking back, E3 2018 had so many games that I ended up loving. They then had Itsuno and Matt Walker on stage where they said DMC is back, which everyone loved. But there was a line at the end that got my attention the most.
Itsuno says that he is convinced that this is the best game that he's ever made because we made it for you, our fans, and we hope you look forward to seeing more.
Saying that this is the best game he has ever created is a huge statement, but the thing is, even back when I hadn't played the games, I could see the vision. They had a lot of time to cook, and let's be real, going on a stage like that and saying that takes a lot of confidence. Now with the dev history mentioned, let's jump into the gameplay itself. Just like before, DMC5 still has that hack and slash gameplay where you take down enemies while filling up the style meter. The structure is like before where you take out demons, get red orbs, and upgrading your moves. You also have the usual blue and purple orbs for increasing health and devil trigger. The controls this time feel so good. I knew from day one when I started playing that these controls were top tier. Without further ado, let's get into the characters themselves. You play as 3 characters in the main story of the game, plus you get a 4th character in their own route. Let's start with the main route characters, starting with Nero. Nero is very much the same like in DMC4. He has his normal moves with a few tweaks, but he also has a few new moves. His dive move while being in the air is my favorite. He still has the same Red Queen and Blue Rose moves, and just in general he is smoother to play as, but we have to talk about his main gimmick. In DMC4, one of the big issues was that he felt a little flowcharty after a while. I still like playing as him, but he needs something else in his moveset. Well, DMC5 has the answer with it being the Devil Breaker. Due to events which we'll get to in the story portion, he can't use his Devil Bringer. So now we have breakers instead. The Devil Breaker is a mechanical arm where each one can have different uses. You collect new arms as the game progresses. The arms themselves can be found when running around in the levels or buying them in the shop. This is a pretty great idea because it helps out vary up his gameplay. The moves that the arms can do depend on which one you have currently equipped. Overture, which is one of the first ones you get, can be used as a pushback with nice damage, but when charging up the arm, you can use it as a bomb, which will explode doing great damage. This goes with all the arms, but if you use the charge up move, the arm is destroyed and you move to the next one in the queue. Releasing the arm does damage to enemies near you, this being another way to move to the next arm in the queue. A great way to remember which one does what is by trying them out in the void. Yes, new to the mainline games is a dedicated training area. This area you can use to try out whatever stuff you want, like new combos with characters or in this example, trying out with the breakers. It's a really nice mode and you can go to it anytime you want. It's safe to say that with Nero, his new breaker system is great. I mean, one of them literally slows down time, so how much better can you get, right? One special mention I do have to give is for the Exceed system. They went ahead and saw how some did not use it much in 4 because of the timing, which admittedly, yeah, the timing was strict. So the timing for the Exceed was better, but they did it in a brilliant way. They made the Exceed its own minigame where if you get close, you still get something. So it incentivizes trying again, which is cool. You know it's important if they have an entire GDC slide for it. This graph you could tell was something that they wanted to follow. Overall, Nero in this game is really good. Moving on to the series newcomer V, who is a lot different from the other characters in the series. For starters, he doesn't actually attack enemies directly. He summons his demons Griffin, Shadow, and Nightmare to do the fighting for him. Wait a second, those names are familiar. Anyways, the demons have to do the fighting and they all have their own movesets. Griffin being the gun, Shadow being the melee, and Nightmare being his DT. When the demons attack the enemies and get them down on health, they don't actually go down. V himself has to do the finishing blow. Most of the time you'll be standing back, then when it's time you have to move in to finish them. The indicator is when the targeting reticle turns into a time limit. If you don't finish them before time runs out, the enemy will get their health back. It might sound scary, but it's actually not that bad. With Shadow being the melee attacker, he is pretty strong and has a few combos, some of them being delayed input ones. Plus, he can send enemies into the air. The main thing to remember with Shadow is that when you dodge to the sides, you slide on Shadow. So if Shadow is doing moves, he will right away cancel them and help you dodge, so remember that. Griffin, on the other hand, is the projectile attacker. He has lightning moves, many lightning moves, and they are all pretty cool. While attacking with Shadow, you can also attack with Griffin for extra damage. One thing with Griffin is that when doing a double jump, V grabs onto him. So if you're doing moves and then you double jump, the move gets cancelled. Again, the playstyle is different, but even when afar, you can pull off some great moves with Griffin and Shadow. His DT Nightmare is really cool. When you summon him, he shows up and does a ton of damage to enemies. You can even get on him once you unlock some moves. Nightmare mainly does punching and using lasers on enemies nearby. The damage output these three can do is wild. Plus, it's good to know that when filling up the DT gauge, V can just read his book while in combat and it fills up. Yes, this is actually a thing you can do while fighting enemies, but knowing this is the case means you can DT fast. You can even use a bar of DT to enhance their attacks. If you use more bars, it stays longer. One word of caution is when playing as V, the summons can go down. If they are attacked too much, they have to recharge, and this can be rough, since they are your primary source of attacking and dodging. Good news is that if you have DT, summoning Nightmare automatically brings any down demons back up, so that's pretty good. Now let's move on to Dante. The best way I can describe Dante in this game is so many options. If you thought he had a lot of options in 4, he gets even more in this game. Starting out, you only have 4 styles to choose from. They are the mainstays like Swordmaster, Gunslinger, Trickster, and Royal Guard. I have to give special mention to Royal Guard, where just like Nero's Exceed, they went ahead and made it easier to use. The timing is not strict and the damage pushback is good. And while there's no special style in this game, his moveset and additions more than make up for it. He starts out like how he did in 4, where he has the Rebellion and his guns, but he has another weapon known as Balrog, this being the gauntlet weapon of the game and it's my favorite of the series. You know it's good when you're hitting enemies and the weapon is literally counting how many times you are doing it. The main gimmick being it gets stronger with more hits and the indicator being the weapon in flames. You can also change between punching and kicking, which adds another moveset to the game. So even starting out is great because you get to experiment with this. Further in, you get the Cavalier motorcycle. Yes, you heard that right, you get to use a motorcycle as a weapon. My favorite part is the fact they have a lot of armor when using it. You don't run as high risk when attacking. It also has a timing system where the combo gets stronger when you go to the next attack. This weapon is just wild. I don't even know what else to say, except running around using it is so good. You can even ride on it and launch enemies. I mean, come on now, it's amazing stuff. Legit, the fact that certain enemies that have shields or have heavy armor could just be shredded when using this makes this one of my favorite weapons. I sense this is a pattern you'll be hearing. His last melee weapon he gets is the King Cerberus weapon. Yes, the same one from 3, though much more. This time, instead of just ice, you also get fire and lightning attacks. For me, this is a great expansion to an existing weapon in the series, since it's familiar but also something brand new. The quick hits and strong hits from the weapon are really fun. The elements also have nice visuals and you feel the attacks. That's it for his melee weapons, but we gotta talk about the ranged weapons quickly. As usual, we have the dual pistols and shotgun, but later on we get the Kalina Ann, and if you're able to find it, the second Kalina Ann, which combined becomes the double Kalina Ann. Best way I could sum it up is that there is a move where you combine 2 rocket launchers together and go down with a laser. I mean, enough said right there. His last ranged weapon is the new Faust weapon where you use a hat. This weapon has the gimmick of using your red orbs. I know that sounds scary, but fixes one of the franchise's issues where at some point you didn't need to use red orbs. Now you have an entire weapon dedicated to use red orbs, which is great. You would think after all this, Dante is pretty awesome, right? He has his weapons, styles, and his DT, but they actually added one more thing for him, his Sin Devil Trigger. A whole new DT form has been added for him. His normal DT increases damage and restores health. His Sin DT does massive damage but doesn't restore health. In order to fill it up, you hold the DT button. In order to use it, it has to be full and you hold down the DT button for a few seconds. Once you use it though, you can do so much damage. It presents an interesting mechanic where, do you save up for Sin DT, or do you use a regular one? With the amount of tools Dante has in this game, you will have a blast. Now these were the characters you could play as when the game originally came out. But in September 2020, during the PlayStation 5 showcase event, we got the announcement of Virgil being added to the game and the special edition being a thing. Along with Virgil, we also got Turbo Mode and Legendary Dark Knight Mode. You know, the one with many enemies to fight. But let's get into the final playable character in the game, Virgil. Now, if you thought Virgil in 4 was OP, then this game, holy Jesus. Virgil, like before, has his 3 weapons, Yamato, Beowulf, and Mirage Edge. Yes, instead of it being a physical sword, it's an actual Mirage now. His moveset for all 3 weapons have been tweaked a little and some new moves have been added. He still has the concentration gauge to fill up, although the effect when it's full looks even cooler. The best part about Virgil in 5 is his mobility. In previous games, while it's great using trick and moving around, there were times where it might not work the way you wanted it to. Here they pretty much fixed that, as he is great to use. It spoke volumes to me that even first time playing him, I was able to get through the game very fast, since you play as him every mission and no one else. His trick moves in this game went through an overhaul and now they are much better. Plus the embed sword mechanic is still here. You can use trick moves on the ground, useful for many situations. With all these trick moves down, you can get it so you are untouchable with some practice. And it's fun. The fun factor with Virgil is huge. When your concentration is maxed out, you could do a big move with any melee weapon, these being Judgment Cut End, Hell on Earth, and Deep Stinger. Beforehand you only had Judgment Cut End, and while it was nice to have, I don't know, there was something about it that it didn't click. Whereas in this game, it's very good. Hell on Earth is really good because of the sheer damage, and it puts most enemies in a stunned state. Deep Stinger is great for taking out certain shields, plus it's fun to zoom around in a fight. Since this can be used during his Sin DT, they can be used more than once. We also cannot forget the staple that is the regular Judgment Cut. This was reworked so now you can do more. With the amount of time you can be in the air, this makes Judgment Cuts so strong. Now we talked about his new moves and mobility, but they added in something extra, this being the Doppelganger. This is used with his normal DT gauge. The Doppelganger is, as you expected, extra damage and more combos to tie into. But as simple as that might sound, this is a great addition and it just shows how overpowered he can be. I say this knowing that if you're not careful in certain parts you can lose, but man, I cannot lie, this is the most fun I've had in an action game. Try not to be shocked, but yes, Virgil is my favorite character to play as in this game. Now let's get into the story of DMC5. If you want to skip this, you can check out the chapters part of the video or jump to the time on screen. DMC5 starts off with a little bit of a different approach as we read a passage from a poem, followed by seeing Morrison who is concerned about Dante, then seeing a giant tree with Dante fighting Urizen. You take control of Nero and catch up only to see everyone down. Nero goes to fight him, but it doesn't work. Dante holds Urizen off while V gets Nero out of dodge. Yeah, that is one heck of an opening. 1 month later, Nero comes back along with Nico to Redgrave City to rescue their friends. With this, we have an amazing opening credits scene. They get to the bridge where Nero tries out the new Devil Breaker. He clears out the bridge and we get a scene as to how this started. Nero was doing stuff in the garage when someone walks in. This person notices the Devil Breaker reacting to them and he snatches it from Nero before leaving, because the Yamato sword is fused in it. Yeah, that's pretty intense if you ask me. Just, doing whatever and then nope, Devil Arm gone. At the end of the second mission, Nero faces up against the Goliath, and once his health is down, V shows up singing poetry and delivers the final hit. Yes, like how I mentioned before, V loves reading his books, so you'll hear many lines of poetry. Nero and V go separate ways to take out the roots of the tree. Nero ends up fighting Artemis, and after defeating it, he finds Lady was the source. She is taken to recover. Next couple missions we play as V, who ends up taking out a few bosses along the way. He overhears that the Devil Sword Sparta still somehow exists, and he plans to find it for Nero. Speaking of Nero, he ends up fighting a boss known as Gilgamesh. Nero defeats it and asks Lady what happened to the group. She is unsure with regards to Dante. Nero and V go through an area, but before going into the tree again, V goes out to find the sword. This leaves Nero with even more questions. He goes to where Urizen is to fight him again, this time actually striking a hit, but this only angers him and yeah, this is a supposed to lose fight again. Right when it looks like it's all over, a demon comes into the rescue. This was already the case before, but the mission structure is unique in that the timeline is a little all over the place. It's mostly for the suspense cliffhanger, which is understandable, but also odd. We see a flashback where Dante meets V for the first time. It's funny because at this point, we haven't seen Dante since the beginning. Morrison brings him up to speed regarding the gig. Dante at this point is older and he just seems done. He is tired and is just going through the motions. However, when V shows up and tells him a powerful demon is resurrecting, his interest peaks. Moving back to V, he eventually finds the Sparta sword, but he also finds a certain someone. Yes, disguising his presence, Dante is still alive. Though V seems strange about all this. He drags the sword over and, as he uses it, Dante wakes up. We then get a flashback with how Eva, Dante's mom, helps Dante to survive but loses her life when trying to find Virgil. We also get to see the events from Dante's perspective on the first time they try to take out Urizen. Looks like Dante was thrown out of the tree. Taking the Sparta sword, Dante goes on ahead. While V has something going on with him, Dante ends up fighting Cavalier Angelo, and just before he wins, he sees Trish as the source, taking out the Angelo and recovering her. He then takes the motorcycle and resumes his route while V stays with Trish, where V mentions the story about his creation. After multiple defeats, his body was breaking down, and this turned out to be Virgil. Yes, the one who threw Nero and took the Amato. He used it on himself to separate man from devil. V being the human, Urizen being the demon. Urizen of course now one with the Amato. Dante in the meantime finds his home. Thinking how the Amato did what it did, he uses the broken rebellion on himself, unlocking his full demonic power. Then we return to the present where Dante intervened to save Nero. Griffin takes Nero away and lets Dante fight Urizen. Dante now gets the Devil Sword Dante, which is so cool. Oh my god. He has a sword with his name. This power pushes back Urizen, but he ends up leaving. The group gets back together and V is looking worse by the minute. They decide to split up to find Urizen, Dante ending up being the first one to find him. After trying to tell him what happened on the night their mother died, Urizen eats the fruit, giving him more power. Then they fight again, this time Dante winning. Nero and V catch up, with V wanting to deliver the final blow, though this is a ruse as V merges with Urizen, thus bringing back Virgil. Dante goes to fight him but is too weak. Virgil leaves to the top of the tree. Nero insists on going with Dante, but then Dante mentions an important detail.
Let me guess, I'm dead weight? Well, you can
That's
show
not
them.
it, Nero.
What is it then?
He's your father!
What?
So yeah, it puts that fight in DMC4 in a different light. Virgil being Nero's father was speculated for many years, but to have it confirmed it's wild. Then again, 4, they would mention how Nero has the blood, so we knew there was a relation somewhere. Still, what time to tell him? Dante goes on ahead to find Virgil, but he first finds V's familiars, who end up being embodied memories of Virgil back when he was Nello Angelo. They take it upon themselves to take out Dante. This right here was wild fighting these guys again because they remixed the music. They did it. They actually brought it back and it's amazing. Plus the final fight where you fight all 3 of them at once is chaotic but tons of fun. But of course, Dante prevails. He pays Griffin his farewells before leaving. While this is going on, Nero gets helped up by the rest of the group. He has his moment, but I can't really blame him. He tries to get them to go back, but then he goes on his own. This leads to the finale of the game. Dante confronts Virgil and asks for the Amato. Of course, after all this, Virgil is not going to give it, thus leading to the brothers fighting each other again. All I'm going to say is this fight is top tier, and on higher difficulties, it could do some damage. It's an amazing fight, the dialogue during it is good stuff, and the theme that plays it's really good. At the end of this, the two go into their Sin DTs ready to clash. Just as they're about to hit, someone comes in between to stop them. After he has a talk with his girlfriend Kyrie, Nero decides to put a stop to the fight before it's too late, awakening to his DT fully and restoring his arm. Well, now you know where the logo of the game is from. Dante being too tired from the fighting lets Nero face Virgil and once again, peak. The fight is peak. It's funny because it starts with a violin, and then it's like you are at the club. Silver Bullet is the name of the battle theme, and it's peak. I know I've said peak many times, but it's true. You finally have access to Nero's DT, and you can use his entire moveset now. Plus, you can literally buster Virgil by taking his sword and using it on him. Wild stuff, I must say. After proving his strength, Nero tells him that the underworld is going to take over if they don't do anything. Dante and Virgil agree, and they depart down. Nero and Nico are driving home, and the scene is almost parallel to the scene at the beginning. I love stuff like that. Nero then goes to fight more demons blocking the way. We then cut to Dante and Virgil, who take out some demons and the roots to the tree, ending the story. In the post-credits, we see that Lady and Trish have taken over the DMC business, while Dante and Virgil spar, ending with a certain line.
Don't you dare say it, jackpot!
It's so good. Now, normally this would be the part where I'd say things what I liked in regards to the story, but there is one more special detail, and it's about the special edition. Now, in the previous games, the special edition brought scenes when playing Virgil's routes, but they were not much at all. They were cool, but it was not an entire campaign worth, if you know what I mean. Now, with DMC5 Special Edition, the format is the same. While the scenes are pretty good, there was the big question as to who the final boss was going to be, because another final boss against a mirror Virgil would have been a letdown, and I feel like the team knew this. So the route ends with a proper Dante boss fight in both Mission 19 and Mission 20. Mission 20 having the Barrier of the Light track as the battle theme. I love this fight so much. It's my favorite fight in any action game. Dante has his entire moveset and he will not hesitate to take you down. The fight can be super chaotic as well. There are moments where it's slow because he tries to royal guard you, but then he can trickster dodge, which means they can go up to 100 real quick. I knew I had to mention this fight because this was actually my most anticipated thing regarding the special edition, and the fact they did it is so good. Now I could say that ends the story of DMC5. I like the story, but the main highlights for me are the character interactions. Those are the things that kept me going. One critique I've heard people say is that the pacing is strange at times, especially with the jumping between characters. I could agree with that only because it does feel a bit jarring going from a big cliffhanger, but then going back to a month before it even started. So I understand where people mention that, but honestly, other than the pacing, I enjoyed my time with it. Seeing Nero deal with his insecurities and wanting to become stronger and help, it's intriguing to see it play out. Watching Dante as now he is older and doesn't want to do much is interesting. He is just trying to do his thing, and the moment he hears about Virgil coming back, he goes right back into action. Having V with the group pose a very interesting dynamic where some of them know who he is, but they're not really rude to him at all. There is a good number of Layer C's characters and so good. What helps as well is the performances. Everyone does really well, but the two that stood out to me are Johnny Youngbosch and Dan Southworth. Johnny once again does great with Nero, and considering how much horror we get out of him here, he does great. And Dan coming back as Virgil was huge. I know he did some lines in 4 Special Edition, but he was only a playable character. Whereas here, he is back in the main story, and it's like he didn't even miss a beat at all. He did awesome. Once the story is completed, you can go get unlockables like harder modes and the super costumes. The Bloody Palace makes a return and the format is just like 4's, which is nice. One major feature they added was the suspend feature, which saves your progress. One thing I would have loved to have seen is some kind of way to play the other missions as other characters, like playing V's missions as Dante or something along those lines. It would have been a cool thing to have for replayability. One thing you don't have to worry about in the game is the music. Holy god, the music. DMC has always had good music, but this game, the production they took was great. They have the regular OST, which has some nice songs, then they have the character battle songs. Each playable character has a song and they're all great. Nero and Virgil's are my favorites. Best part about the character themes is when in combat, the higher the rank, the more it ramps up. So it starts out slow, but if you rank up fast, the song speeds up real quick. And it's beautiful. Considering you'll hear these themes in battle, it for me never got old. It was always hype hearing it. Now after all of this, we have to go back to what was said during the E3 2018 Xbox showcase. The line of them being confident that this is the best game Itsuno has ever made. Well, I think it's safe to say that after all this that yes, this is an amazing game. For me, it's the best in the genre, and when you consider all the odds that were against it, it makes it that much better. For Itsuno, this was a big deal, and it's wild considering that after this, he did end up making Dragon's Dogma 2 before leaving the company later in 2024. So in the end, he did make both DMC5 and Dragon's Dogma 2. It's also wild when it comes to the mainline games, this is it for the reviews. I started doing this in 2020 as something I wanted to try out. I had always heard about DMC, but it was not until 2018 at the Xbox Showcase when I was intrigued. To do a review on the series is, well, it's amazing. And who knows what the future holds for the series. I know I am not the only one who would love to see a DMC 6, but with how things are, it still might be a long time. For now though, we have an excellent game in DMC 5. I am very glad we ended up getting it. If you liked this video and want to see more, check out the other videos on the channel. Thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next video.